Hello there, and welcome to Delightful Dissent. This is now episode 7, which is very exciting. We're getting through the episode really quickly, and today I'm with Simon Batchelar, and we're going to be talking about the assumption people buy answers. So welcome to the show. Thank you very much for joining us, Simon.
Thanks for having me, Matthew.
It's great to have you on. So in case you're new to the show, Delightful Dissent is really about challenging assumptions, and quite often those deep assumptions, the kind that we make without even knowing that we're making them, because they're actually the ones that trip us up in the long run. And what I want you to get from this show is maybe a chance to think about some of these assumptions and get some tips and some stuff that will help you approach things in a slightly different way. But perhaps more importantly, I want you to see what it is to do this work and to challenge assumptions yourself, because I would like to see a world where everyone is free to challenge assumptions and to do this and really move things forward as a true expression of their experience and what they know. The show is called Delightful Dissent because, challenging assumptions is dissenting. It's saying, no, this isn't how we think about things. This how we think about things actually isn't right. There's something going on here that we've missed. The delightful part, though, is about challenging assumptions in a positive way, doing so in a way that results in benefit for everyone. It's not just fighting against and rebelling against. It's different. It's about creating something better that honors what was, but that enables us to do something different in the future. So this show is genuinely live. Stuff may or may not go right. We've had a few interruptions before. Hopefully there won't be anything too much in this show, but please remember that it is really live. There may also be difficult topics coming up. We do sometimes talk about personal things. So please be advised that, when you're watching, to watch out for that. It is possible there may be strong language as well. It doesn't always happen, but it's not something that we deliberately avoid. So just know that that's a possibility. But do engage with the show. This is, whilst it is primarily a conversation today between me and Simon, this is part of a wider community conversation. So your comments and your input absolutely help us really, move this forward, and you're part of this conversation. If you're watching live, you can add comments and there'll be a chance for us to answer them during the show and answer any specific questions at the end. If you're watching afterwards, then please do comment in whatever platform this is shared on, and one of us will hopefully be able to reply to you there. Today I'm with Simon, and I first met Simon through the Happy Startup School, and really interested kind of in his background and his really quite different take on marketing. And having come from a non-commercial background, I was not that relatively naive about marketing, and also slightly off-put by the whole idea. And his approach was really quite helpful because, I run a business now, and selling is a part of that, and marketing is a part of that, but doing it in a slightly different way. So that's why I really wanted to get Simon on here today, partly because of this approach and his really good, clear and practical way of describing it, and partly because for me this approach is absolutely relevant to the kind of change work that the kind of people who watch this show and the kind of people I work with are doing. I think it's really important that we are creating positive relationships with people right from the beginning, right from when we first meet them. And that, in modern terms, is often digital marketing. So, Simon, if I could ask you briefly to introduce yourself in your own words a bit and tell us a little bit about who you work with, please.
Of course, yeah. So I'm Simon Batchelar. I'm a marketing coach, and I'm the co-founder of Marketing Success Club, as well as the digital agency Pallant Digital. So I've been working in digital marketing, or websites, as it was called back when I started it. That was back in 2003. I started a business with my business partner, back when the internet was still going to catch on, before Facebook. When Amazon just sold books, there was no Gmail. This was the Wild West of the internet back then. So we started a business back then, and we've been running a digital agency ever since. We worked out the other day, we've worked with over 400 small businesses in that time. So we've had all of the conversations. I've heard all of the excuses. I've seen all of the different ways that people have tried to tackle the marketing over the years. And we've created Marketing Success Club to work with the kind of business who are not quite ready to approach an agency. So maybe you're sort of circling around your business thinking, right, this is all working, but I need to take it to the next level. But you just don't have that agency budget that you would need to make an agency offer value. So we've created Marketing Success Club to try and sort of offer some training, support, assistance, coaching to people in a market full of I guess some sort of noise and rather interesting and suspect methods. So we wanted to be a voice of clarity and practical advice from people who have been there and done it, rather than just have read a book and are now, shouting from the rooftops that they know what to do.
That's great, thank you. And we'll have a chance to explore a little bit more about exactly what you're doing with the Marketing Success Club at the end, hopefully. Just a little bit about, very briefly though, about the kind of people that you particularly like to work with. Who are your community made up of?
So my real sort of passion is working with the business owners, founders. That's where I really see eye to eye with what's going on, because over the years we've run about 4 or 5 different businesses, and I just really get enthusiastic about the energy and the commitment it takes to start a business. So I think I just am on the same wavelength as other people who've made that step. They've gone out of their comfort zone and said, right, I'm going to start my own business. And that energy and excitement is where I really gel. And then over the last few years, we've really tried to work with businesses who are trying to do something a little bit differently, and are maybe trying to approach the market and challenge the status quo. And they're maybe, trying to look at something in a more sustainable or ethical way. That's really where my passion lies at the moment, is helping those businesses stand out in the marketplace.
That's great. I think it's so important. A lot of the people I work with really do struggle with getting their voice heard, and today's assumption is actually really an interesting one for this, because one of the ways you can make your voice heard is in not necessarily helpful ways. You can really not do good in the way that you market, and that then makes it very hard to do good later on. For me, I think it's and also obviously you have that kind of negative effect to make up for, which isn't very helpful. So I think it's really great. Really excited to be having this conversation today and getting into this. And I really do, whilst this is going to be about marketing, I also want to make it clear that this is going to be about some deeper stuff as well, and the stuff behind it and the why. So it's not just we're really going to go exploring, I hope, rather than just give you a list of tips. So listicles elsewhere, but so this is a bit of a more in-depth exploration of what's behind the curtain.
Absolutely, of course.
Brilliant, good stuff. So if you've watched the show before, you'll know I like to start by inviting my guests to share a quote. So, Simon, is there something that you'd like to share with us that kind of supports, gives a bit of an angle on what we're going to be going with this?
Yeah. So my quote is from an author called Seth Godin, who's written extensively about marketing and has written a lot of books that have changed the way people do marketing. So I felt the spirit in which he writes makes this a really good quote to share. And it was one of those quotes, when you're reading a book and you read it and you just think, hang on, I'm going to need to go and have a walk to think about that. And essentially his quote is that your business isn't for everybody, and that's okay. And when I first heard that, I thought, wow, he's bang on. Like, here's me getting worried about people who don't want to do business with me, and actually I don't need to worry about them. Seth Godin says it's all right. He says, I can just not worry about them. And it was that permission almost that he'd granted through his words to say, like, don't worry about it. You're not for everybody, and that's okay. And that really struck a chord with me. And ever since, I've tried to remember that every time I'm working on something.
It's incredibly liberating, I think, actually, to accept, to understand that. And and I think for me, for those of us who are kind of running values-led, purpose-led businesses, it's worth understanding that we may not be directly working with everyone, but we know we're kind of contributing to the overall good as well, and that's kind of how we relate those two things. Because I think it's difficult to be, as someone, with that passion for doing good work, purpose-led, values-led work. It's like, well, if I'm not serving everyone, then there's something wrong. But it's that you don't work with everyone directly, or you don't work with everyone at this phase. I think one of the things for me, I work with people around early stage ideas, whether it's whether they're coming at a completely new practice, or whether they're kind of reinventing or an aspect of what they're doing, or unfolding a new aspect of what they're doing. For me, it's always going to be something kind of new and different, and when you do that, there are only going to be the early adopters who are really interested. There's a small group of people initially, and you might get into the place that you're actually really the big change later on, and that's completely worthwhile intention. But you start with a small group, and you start with real focus, and I think that's a really, knowing that that's okay, and knowing and holding that as an intention, I think is powerful, as well as being really
Yeah, I found it quite empowering, because it means that you can choose where to focus your energy. So you don't need to focus your energy on the 80% of people who don't open your email to instantly jump to a marketing analogy, but you don't need to worry about them. That's fine. They'll get another one next week, and maybe they'll open that. Maybe that one will be for them. But the few people who do, the 20% who do, that's what you should be looking at. And I found it to be a great tool, even just to make it feel like it's worthwhile, because that's a struggle that I think people have sometimes, is they put all of this effort into things, putting stuff out there, and then maybe they're comparing themselves to a big YouTuber who's getting millions of views. And they're like, well, I didn't get millions of views, so that was a waste of time, wasn't it? And it might be that actually 4 people watched it, and then one of them became a customer. So it was totally worth it. But because they're thinking about the everybody picture, they miss that they've had an amazing result from what they've done, and they've walked straight past it and not given it any time or any reflection.
Absolutely. And I think there's another thing for me in this is certainly my experience, and on some level this show is a marketing exercise. It's about people hearing what we're doing and hopefully relating to it, and then hopefully working with us in some way. But I do this show partly because I just really enjoy talking to the people I'm talking to. It's great to have these amazing conversations. So I would pretty much have these conversations when no one was watching, because they're really good fun. And I think thinking about that as well, and that is divisive, because what I enjoy isn't necessarily what everyone else wants, but hopefully it's what the people that I most want to work with want. So it's a different way of thinking about things, and I think it's absolutely really in this space of challenging some quite deep assumptions about how we market.
Yeah, I resonate with what you just said there, in terms of, it's almost like, well, do something that you would do even if no one was watching or listening or in interacting, and that will be the most authentic way of doing what you do, or saying about what you do. And then if the right people will find it and find it interesting, and it will take time. But I think that's another big challenge we have, is time, but we can get onto that at a different time. But I think the thing is the assumption that people need the solution to what you're doing right now. And if you can't deliver that, then what you've done is a failure. And I think that is a key sort of thing to overcome, is that actually, you do need to give it time. And a wise old business coach of mine many years ago gave me the analogy of a tree. It's like when you plant a tree, you put the seed in the ground. You don't dig it up every day to see whether it's growing. You put the seed in, you water it, and it takes a couple of weeks, maybe months, before that little green shoot comes through. And all of the seeds you plant, they're not all going to grow into trees. So, and this analogy is I think perfect for marketing. Of you may get to 10, 15, 20, 30 episodes of this, and you're still building cumulatively, slowly, piece by piece, chipping away at this audience. But actually, the people who are engaged and watch every episode, it's a great feeling to know that people are doing it. And it even if one by one, even on the podcast I do, we're growing it literally probably 3-4 people a week. That's slow going, but it cumulatively adds up. So
and I think this is one of the things about this, is it can be quite scary, and so to do things in this slightly non-linear way, and this kind of, it means stepping back from certainty. And I think we're talking about people by answers as an assumption, and in a way that means we're putting our stock in the answers as well. We're saying we're assuming we have the answers in order to sell them. And that's not necessarily the case either. We might have a set of tools, and we might have a set of experience, but we can't speak for other people. We can't come to their answers for them.
I'd say that's probably one of the most common things I get asked for. I'd say probably three, maybe 4 times a week is for the answers. I just get asked for the answer sheet to marketing. Have you got the answers there, Simon? I'm like, no, and no one does. There's a lot of people who are going to tell you they do, but people come to me and say, hey, Simon, have you got a marketing plan I can use? I'm like, well, yeah, but you've got to make your own one. And I think it is the answer that people don't want to hear. And unfortunately, when people come to me and ask me for the answers, I'm not afraid to give them the answer they don't want, because I think it's way better to be upfront with people and say, well, I know I don't have that, and the reason for that is because that isn't how it works. But unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there in any sector, not just in marketing, in any sector, who won't. They will just sell you the answer, and in selling you the answer, you will discover that isn't what you wanted to buy. But it's too late by then. You're stuck. You're invested. They've got your money, and it's. I think that's in all sectors. There are always going to be people buying that, but it's this perception that I think I need this, so I'm going to go out and buy this, rather than taking a step back from that and going, I want to get there. How do I get there? Is the big difference I try and talk through with people who are approaching me and wanting answers.
Absolutely. And I think, it feels like there's a fear almost on both sides. I sense quite a lot of fear, particularly, fundamentally, I work with people who have change practices. They work with something to change it, whether they work with a person so that person can change, or whether they work with an organization so that can change, or, or all sorts of things, or a physical space even. That quality of change, to say, put that cookie cutter method on every single thing that you work with, every single person that you work with, when we know they're all different, all bringing a different perspective, all at different stages, to feel that you have to do that, I think, and that is the root of a lot of the problem. We see these, in my world in particular, kind of coaching courses and stuff, and for me it's quite toxic. It's basically saying, I have this path to success, I know what success is, I've achieved it, and if you follow these steps, you'll get there yourself.
I mean, I think that's a really, really prevalent in the marketing, sales, advertising game. It is this our tried and tested 10-step method, 10x your income with my book and process and online video course, blah, 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 blah. And it's just, you're not good enough. I'm really good. I can get you to be good enough. And it's that preying on people's insecurities. And even as business owners' insecurities, if we forget the personal level insecurities of not looking right. You don't look like a successful business owner. You don't wear a suit and drive a car. You're not on a beach every third weekend of the month, so you're not successful. And you very rarely see that successful business image of maybe someone walking their dog on a Thursday afternoon, or because they've done their to-do list, or someone spending time with them, family and friends. That's not painted as success. So even with that sort of level of success ladder, where do you rank yourself? I think the next level is then saying, well, there is only one way to get there, and it's this method. And I'll be honest, the only time I've ever purchased into programs or courses or coaching is where the method and the process we're going to be following is open, it's free. It's just it's there, because you're not selling this kind of weird sort of lock-in practice. It's like, look, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. And if you want to connect with me and let me guide you on this process, then we can work together. And those are the only products I've ever purchased, and that's why we've done it that way ourselves. And I think that gets round this sort of toxic kind of like, you need to join our gang to be part of this, and our gang is the successful gang. It's like, the school playground a bit, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. No, it really does feel like that. And I think social media can make it feel like that as well. It is exactly that, and it's the conformity. It's the being, one of the cool kids. This is what you're only valued and valuable if you're like this.
Yes.
And that's a really, we can be, I think one of the interesting things is, we have quite a lot of power, soft power, influence, but power when we do this work, and particularly the kind of people that I tend to work with who, whose main work is around kind of influence and changing people's ways of thinking, and can do this, almost without thinking about it. And so if you've set up this situation where you're changing people's ways of thinking in a way that doesn't serve them, even if it's kind of, you're doing it kind of as a means to an end, as part of that, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good for you. It's not going to be good for them. It's not a good relationship, and it makes the work very transactional as well. And when I say transactional, it often becomes very kind of zero-sum, a trade-off. You're almost it doesn't feel that there's always some loss on one side, as well as it's hard to say it's a good thing, feels good, and no one wants to do that work. No one wants to spend their life thinking that that's what they're doing. I hope.
I think there is a temptation when you first discover that something that you thought was obvious that other people don't know, to instantly try and hide that away and be like, aha, I've got the secret sauce for how this works. And if you want to get some of the secret sauce, you've got to pay me to do it. And I think everybody goes through that moment of being like, ooh, excited that you've learned, you've got something to offer. And then there are two ways to go. I think you either go down the, right, I'm going to turn this into a machine that pumps out this, product, process, or it's like, actually, do you know what? I'm going to try and use this to do something a bit bigger and actually make an impact with what I know. And that might be, in many cases, it's just sharing it, just maybe writing a book on it, or even a blog if it's a little idea. But quite often with experts of all levels, it's like, well, I'm going to write a book on it and just let people explore this on their own. Or a video or a documentary, or do you know what I mean? There's loads of different ways you can do it. But I think, to me, there's that feeling of, what we teach isn't unavailable. It's not a complete secret what we do. It's just the way we do it and the approach we have to it is what I think makes it feel more like we're working with someone rather than selling them something. And I think that makes that process a lot easier. Like I never feel uncomfortable talking about our products and services. I never feel like I'm selling, because I'm not selling a bucket of SEO or a shoebox of ads. It's like I'm actually, I'm going to be working with you. We're going to do this, and that feels like a real genuine conversation to have, rather than kind of like, well, I can give you a coupon code for 20% off of the magic, and
it's really interesting, because it feels like, if there's some secret at the heart of your business, it's like it's all leading up to this big reveal. And it's like, and that's, when we think about a marketing funnel, it's like, have you spent enough to get the big reveal? And that reminds me of a particular quasi-spiritual organization I'm not actually going to mention, but it doesn't sound like a healthy way to relate to people. For me, it's very very disempowering and problematic. And I think one of the interesting things for me about the work that I do is on some level, I want people to challenge me back. I want people to become strong, to be able to get their own perspective, so that I can then improve mine. And I think one of the interesting things for me, I've been writing a book this year, and it's actually quite a humiliating experience, humbling experience, perhaps is a better word. Getting those words down and getting those ideas down with clarity. So with all this stuff that I feel, I can talk about it, but if I need to kind of put it down in clear steps, that's hard. And if I'm not there yet, then how can I ever say to someone, I've got all the answers? And as soon as you put it down in clear steps, you realize it's contextual. Yeah, it works. It's partially true. It's like, so why is it partially true? And that the idea that there is an absolute truth and a certainty that we're kind of, that one person has been privileged to have revealed, maybe in totality, I wouldn't, I'm not going to make a strong statement that that's impossible. What I am going to say, I think it's very unlikely that a significant number of businesses have one of those people and have done so.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it is easy to, no, maybe not easy. It is definitely possible to construct a sequence of products and services of ever growing complexity and cost to disguise the fact that ultimately what you're doing isn't really of much value. And unfortunately, that is a business model that is proven to work. I don't agree with it, but it certainly is out there, and there's a lot of people cashing in on it right now. And I think, in any sector, there's always going to be a bad egg out there who's set the bar as to what people's expectations are. And I think, even in the wellness space, I mean, you can name, a lot of stuff that's just total fad-based pseudoscience. But people are making
in the wellness space, I would argue. Actually,
it's prevalent there. So if you're clever and entrepreneurially minded, you can take what you learn from the wellness space and apply it to any professional service. Because people would instantly resonate. It's like, if you're susceptible to this, you will be susceptible to that. And it doesn't take a genius to work out how to sell. If you really want to, you can sell into pretty much any subset of community. But I think it's that ethical reason behind, should you do it, or is that what do you get out of it, I guess. So I can see why people I can see why some people perceive selling or marketing to be a bit sticky and a bit used car salesman and a bit because I've seen it done badly. I see it being done badly every day. And there are bad eggs out there who are selling snake oil, essentially. So, but then that's the same with legal services, accountancy, you name it, coaching, mentoring, counseling, therapy, whatever you want to go, thinking about the sort of workshopy type things. There's always going to be someone out there doing it badly.
Yeah, it's definitely true. And I think for me, I work almost exclusively in new services, unique services that don't really have a precedent. They're a combination of maybe 2 or 3 other things, but they're not. They don't have a comparator. So the idea of kind of not being very good is an interesting one, and I think this relates to not having the answers for me, and not saying that you have to have the answers. If you have to be perfect, if you have to be, create a situation where you have a perfect answer, where you do hold this great secret, you can never really get started. How would you get started in that space? How would you create something new? Because you can't know before you set out and start exploring what it is. And I think it actually holds us back on that level, particularly if we are in this space and we're trying to create some change, trying to do something different. If we're assuming that we must have this answer and that's all that people are going to engage with us, engage with us around, then we're gonna really struggle to get started. And I very often see that's the big problem. One of the problems I help people with is getting started in a way that then enables you to carry on is hard. And if you're trying to get answers that a universally applicable answer for people before you even start, you'll come across one of those or 2 of those in the exploration, but you're not going to come across it before you even start, and that holds people back, and that's a real shame, because it stops people from doing the work that's really them.
Yeah, and I think one of those things that I see in thinking of holding people back is this impossible comparison. So people are comparing themselves to the big name in the industry, or comparing themselves to a peer maybe who's been doing it for 20 years longer, or and they're like, well, I'm never going to be that person. And you think, well, not if you don't start. And I think the courage to get out there and do something is the biggest and hardest bit of a business, I would say. Or even launching a new concept or a new methodology or principles, for example, or a philosophy rather. Sorry. So if you've got a new philosophy about something, you've got a new methodology of how you think something should be done, just the courage to take that first step and tell someone about it is huge.
Yeah, it's so difficult to get to that point. It takes a leap, it takes something different, and it's it's such a difficult thing. I think I also suspect that if people are buying services, because one of the ways we get started is we seek help. And we need to seek help. It's completely valid to seek help and to offer help in a vulnerable way as well. And that's kind of the other side of this, I suppose. But when we do seek help, if we've got someone who's selling a complete perfect answer, they're going to insist that we become that, that we follow those steps, effectively, that we become them in that aspect.
Yes.
And that's not helpful either. We're going to it may not fit our context, it may not work for us, in which case it's just going to fail immediately. But perhaps more perniciously, well, certainly over a longer term, if it kind of works, if it kind of results in some material success, but very hollow success that just isn't us, we're going to end up stuck in that. We're going to end up running a business, doing work that just isn't us. And that, for me, feels almost worse than not having any success at all.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think and this again is the idea that if you go looking for a specific answer, then we always use the phrase of, if you prescribe to yourself what the result looks like, then you will get exactly what you paid for. So if you're paying for a result, you will get that result. But if that result isn't the right fit for you, the person who's selling you the result isn't going to tell you that, because that's not the question you've asked. You've said, I want this. Okay, well, I can sell you that. Great. This is how much it is. Let's go. And as you say, you may then go on a coaching program, go on a training course, and end up like the person who's training you, which is exactly what you've purchased. And I think a lot of people don't stop or don't know how to, or can't find any assistance in that step just before that. They do that to say, what is the result I actually want to get to? What is the right help that I need? And therefore, who is the right person to go to, or the right questions to ask of the person? Because it's that answer focus that works so well for people who are essentially selling the same thing over and over again. Because if someone asks too many questions, your product might not be the right fit. So thinking about this from a sales point of view, questions are bad news, because it means you're not, you're potentially not going to be able to help that person, right? Or the wrong question is bad news. Whereas if you can pre-answer the questions and get all of that sorted and just sell the same thing over and over, then ultimately what you end up with is a really repeatable, scalable business, which is what a lot of big business enterprises are looking for, right? So I think if you are doing something different, or you're trying to challenge the way stuff is done, then you have to be careful what you ask for, because with professional services, you get exactly what you ask for.
Yes, at best, I suppose.
Yeah.
The best outcome. And if it's really interesting, because this absolutely, it's very plays into exactly the kind of work that people I do. Is one of the ways that I understand this set of work and this change work is that its primary value is delivered in different questions rather than right answers. It's about are we doing the right thing rather than are we doing the thing right? And we need to ask ourselves that as well as part of this, and I think very often the challenge of doing this work is though that's where our differentiation is, but that's the kind of leadership that we're showing. That's the edge we're pushing. That's the bit that no one can answer for us. And that's where our value comes from as well, in the questions we have explored for ourselves and therefore for people like us, and the confidence that we've got from exploring that we can then use to guide others in this exploratory space, rather than being like, this is the exact path I followed last time, and so therefore this is the exact path that's going to get us both to where we want to be.
Yeah, I think the path is always different and looks different to everybody who's on it. And I think if you're trying to work out where, I think a lot of people, rightly so, are just looking to achieve something. They're like, right, okay, I want more people to know about this new methodology I've got for my business, and I believe it's the brand new way that everyone should be doing it. So now what? And it's like, okay, I need more people to hear about it. So what do? Well, you go on the internet, how to get more people to read my blog. Bam, there you go. Now you're into a world of, a whole world of conflicting advice, right? There's all these different ways. And, I can point in the direction of someone who can get you 10,000 views a week on your blog if you've got the money, and you did it. We can all. There's so many different ways of doing it, but what's right for you? And then therein comes the big question of, well, what is the right question to ask to make sure I go down the right path? Am I? If you're still with 5 different paths to go down and they all look equally daunting and equally expensive, where do you go and what do you do? It's really difficult. I mean, yeah, I don't know necessarily how to get the right questions to those people, but I do try and talk about some of the decisions or questions you might want to ask, which is why I've come to talk to you, because it's always I think just even getting people to think about the fact they've got to ask the question before they seek the answer is a great way to start. And even if that's all people take away from today, that would be, I think, a big step.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for me, there's something in asking different questions. It's not the same question over and over. And one of the ways that we do that is answers always imply a question, like methods always imply a question. It's just that it's kind of hidden very often, the underlying assumption behind it. It's like, you want more people, for whatever more people means, reading your blog. It's like, which people? Why? What does that actually do? But there's this assumption that we want that, and so we think there are all these things that we have to do, and it gets very overwhelming, and it becomes like, to be a successful business, to be a successful person, to be happy with what I'm doing, I need to do all these things and get all these outcomes. And for me, it's not true. Some of them you can learn from them, definitely, but it's not actually about doing that and imitating the success of others. But that means stopping doing some things. So if we're looking at this particular space, what is it that people can stop worrying about, stop doing with their marketing, and perhaps with the things that they're buying as well?
Well, I would say if you are spending money currently, then you should only be spending money if you can work out what it's got you back. So if you are paying someone to run some ads, or you are paying Facebook to run some ads, is that getting you leads? Is that selling you product? If it's not, then just stop it, because it doesn't matter what you're spending. If you can't measure it, then there's better ways to spend that money. I think if you are writing content or making videos or tweeting or whatever the output of your social content is, and you are worried that no one is reading it, no one is liking it, no one is sharing it, you need to, or I would advise you to, think about why you need those likes and shares and comments. How does that benefit you? How does it benefit your business beyond the little dopamine hit you see when you get a like or a share, which is easily addicted? That's why these services exist, because they are very addictive. If you haven't seen The Social Dilemma, check it out, because that will tell you all about it. But on the face of it, there's the vanity metrics of likes, shares, and follows. Instagram has actually taken away the number of likes, so only the person who posted it can see now, which I think was a huge step, and actually a brave step for a network that was pumping vanity metrics in everybody's face all day, to flip their biggest vanity metric over and just say, doesn't matter how many, just the fact that someone liked it is enough. So without getting too much down a rabbit hole of vanity metrics, essentially look at, if you're creating content, what do you want that content to achieve? Does the end goal of creating that content serve you and your business to make a difference? So if you're trying to widen the reach of your thoughts, philosophies, and method, you don't necessarily need a sales pitch at the end of that blog, but maybe putting a gentle call to action of just share this with someone else or sign up so I can send you more of this great information with an email might be enough. And maybe that's a better metric to measure, is how many people are joining you, or you get people to message you to find out more, that kind of thing. And actually maybe interactions is a better metric to measure, so maybe trying to stop focusing on things that you think or are being told are important. So if you imagine you're a big marketing agency and you've got a very top brand client who is paying you millions of pounds a week to put their message out everywhere, they can't measure every product sale. So they have to go on feeling metrics, essentially. Was that post positively received? Okay, yeah, we got 200,000 likes on it. We got shares. It's the audience are in fit with our target audience, etc., etc. For them, those metrics are all they've got.
Mm.
Whereas for small business, all you've got are relationships and people. So unless you can find people and reach people and make a difference with what you're saying, then you've got to ask yourself, is this the right thing to be saying? Putting the energy into this, is it even worth it? As I said right at the beginning, if you put it out and 10 people read it and one person gets in touch and says, I really enjoyed that, it was totally worth it, because you've made a difference to one person's thinking, to their ideas, to their who knows, whatever your content is about. But so I think there are big blogs, mega blogs out there on metrics, measuring engagement, big number stats, spreadsheets, analytics tools, dashboards. But ultimately, if we get down to basic business, it's, are there new customers being generated by it? Do they buy the stuff?
And I think for me, on some level, there's another important thing, and metrics are really interesting because they're necessary, but they never give us the whole picture, and they can be so distorting. Is also to think about how aware you can become of the value of what you're doing to your clients, to the people, to your community. I think there's something really interesting in there, thinking about, yeah, great, okay, so ultimately it generates a sale. But when you do get that, it's what's the value that the content has generated, and I think that's a really interesting focus, because for me, a lot of this is about really creating something, almost value out of something that didn't exist before. It was there as a possibility, and what we do by creating something is we kind of manifest something by which we can get to something that wasn't there before, which is kind of magical work. But thinking about that from our community's perspective, it's like when someone shares something, what's in it for them? Are they sharing it as a favor, or what are they getting out of it, and how does that benefit them, and how does that benefit me, and how is that making sure that that's all positive, on both sides? Because I think one of the other things I see in marketing is there is a people-pleasing element to this. And I think, the quote that we started with is trying to please everyone, and letting go of the fact that you don't have to please everyone is a really important part of this for me. So yeah, not having to think about your marketing in those terms, and just think about the relationships that you're supporting, and deepening those relationships by offering people something that's really great for them and that they really enjoy, and that's a true expression of what you want to do and is enjoyable for you and has energy for you as well. For me, is absolutely the core of this. And I think there's that might sound kind of hippie and slightly idealistic, but there's a very grounded element, psychological element in this. Is people are much more sensitive to the tone of something than we think they are. They actually, people physically sense in their bodies the kind of character of the conversation. And if you feel awkward and unpleasant and it's tight, and they feel that in their body, whether they notice it or not. And that forms part of their judgment about what you're offering and you as a person. So if you're doing something you don't like and you don't enjoy, you're kind of forcing yourself to do something, it's going to come across in everything that you create. And it's not going to be something that draws the right kind of people, the people that you really want to, you want to work with towards you.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that. I think you've hit the nail on the head there, I think, in terms of it is that. And I think authenticity and being your authentic self when you're putting stuff out is one of the most effective ways to engage with an audience. And thinking of an earlier point you made about, why if someone shares, it's that, well, what's in it for them? Why would they do it? I think if you can create content that aligns with people and it allows them to say, yeah, do you know what? I agree with that. That is exactly what I think about this. Then the sharing of that is them announcing, maybe you're articulating it in a way they've not been able to do. So the share is them saying, check this person out. They've just described what I've been trying to get out of my head for the last 6 months. And this blog, this video has just absolutely nailed it. Here it is. Poof. And then, they'll share it. And that then, if you're putting out that kind of content, that's when 1 or even 2 shares is massive, because that's 2 people who got it, who are like, you and me, we're on the same page here. And that's brilliant. I mean, if you're just starting out with writing, thinking, if we think about that courage element we were talking about earlier, even if you set your goal for making a content, well, I want to get 1 person who likes this or shares it, and that's it. Then, it's not for everybody, but those who it is for, they're gonna grow naturally. And I think making authentic content is a really great way of growing that and being, I want to say, nurturing your courage, maybe, because maybe sort of looping it back round and going, do you know what? I'm really glad I took this step, because actually I have got someone enthusiastic, and I've got someone, on the same page as me. And so it was worth it.
I think that's a really important point, is that when we do this authentic work, when we really share this stuff, when we go out and say we're vulnerable and we say, actually, I don't have all the answers. This is my experience, and I don't know the right thing for you. I'm not even sure what the right thing for me is at this point. And I think those of us given to questioning work tend to be in this place a lot. We're used to being uncertain about things just because of the way that we think about the world. And that the value in that ability to engage with the uncertainty rather than to jump straight to a conclusion is really where our work does its magic. But being able to share that is risky. It's not allowed. We grow up in a situation where we're often punished for doing that kind of thing, not necessarily explicitly, but where we don't, where it's implied that there's something wrong with us when we are uncertain, when we aren't sure of a specific answer. And so we grow this outwards. And I think part of being vulnerable is creating situations where it is safe to fail, where it's okay to fail. And if you make your very first content, say this live stream is going out, and it's suddenly going out to like 20,000 people live, I'm not confident enough to do that yet. Maybe I will be. But it's about building out and starting with what's around you and growing around you and letting your confidence and your capability in what you're offering and how you're explaining it grow with that, rather than having to get to like jumping all the way to an answer, jumping all the way to perfect, jumping all the way to a solution, let alone that for many of us that will change over time, that we can't actually reach that final definitive answer, that when we do, we'll move on to another thing.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot to be said for starting small and accepting the fact that you are going to be starting small and then you're going to build up, and that will help you get going. Because with that impossible comparison thing, if you think, oh well, I need to get this and it's not going to be good enough until it's there at that level, then you're never going to get there, because you'll always be holding yourself back. So I mean, obviously you've got to have an aspiration to want to do something, otherwise you're never going to start, are you? You've got to work towards some kind of direction, otherwise you're going to be running around in circles. But
it does emerge over time. I think that's one of the other things, is the questions emerge over time as well as the answers, and then they kind of, for me, they work together. But again, allowing yourself to allow that to emerge, and that you start off kind of largely trial and error, and you narrow down over time until you're getting more and more precise, and that's when the work gets more and more powerful. But even then, it's not about a specific answer.
Yeah. I think it's just knowing that the questions that you ask, the more questions you ask of the people you would normally seek answers from, will give you more clarity on the actual answer you're looking for. And people who are willing to discuss those questions with you, and even, I would say, willing to say no, those are the people you'll learn the most from. I mean, we turn away way more people than we accept on to what we do, our training, because they're just not the right fit. They're not going to work. It's not for them. So we just say, look, do you know what? For you at this moment, it's not the right fit. Come back in this time, or they may be beyond it. And actually, we can't help them. They're already too far beyond where we would get them. But I think having the confidence to say that to someone comes with time. And so if you're speaking to someone that you're trying to get an answer from, can you help me get this? And they just say, yeah, sure, straight away, and don't ask you any questions, then maybe you should be thinking, am I talking to the right person here? Whereas if they say, well, can you tell me about this? Can you tell me about that? Can you tell me about that? And if you don't know the answers to any of those questions, that's great, because then you're going to learn and think about that. And then the next person you go and talk to, you can say, look, this is where I am. This is what I've got. Can you help? And then you'll gradually get more and more clarity on where you are. And I would be very concerned if the answer you were looking for at the beginning of that process is still the same answer at the end of that process.
That's that. I think as a kind of summation of that, the idea that, which is implied in the idea that people buy answers, people know what they want at the outset, and that's a great way to sum up why people don't really. Well, people might try and sell answers, and we might buy them, but they're not of value to us if we do. And pre-packaged answers, as it were. No, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. That was a really interesting conversation, and I hope it's been as useful for you in the community as it has been for me. If people would like to get in touch with you or find out more about your work, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, one of the things you can do is you can have a experience of the way I describe what I do in a bit more depth. We've got a free course you can do called Get Marketing Working for Your Business. And that's where I go through my methodology, my process, and give you 5 things you can do to apply to your business. And that's just available at marketingsuccess.club. So I think that's probably a good first step for people to take, because it's a great way to just experience the way I describe things and I talk about things and see if it's the right fit for you.
Great. Cool. We'll share the link in the notes once I get a chance to add that. So yeah, okay. So I hope that's raised some thoughts for you, and you do get in touch with Simon about anything specifically around this assumption around marketing, or me around the more general stuff and Delightful Dissent in general. I'd love to hear from you, and it really is, it's one of the great joys of doing this kind of thing is the interaction with people and hearing people's own experiences and learning from them. So this show is taking a break over Christmas. We're just taking a couple of weeks off from the live recordings, and because they all are recorded live, there is a gap, so we couldn't kind of get stuff pre-canned to go, because we can't have the answers ahead of time. But we'll be back in early January, and I'm going to be talking to Lana Yelenev about the assumption it's my responsibility to make things happen. So we'll be talking about that live 1 p.m. UK time on Thursday, the 7th of January. So slightly different, and obviously these do move around a little bit, so everyone can fit in. But yeah, so that's Thursday, the 7th of January, and I'd very much hope to see you there. So thank you very much, Simon, for joining me today. It's been great talking to you.
That's all right. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for inviting me on, Matthew.
Great stuff. Thank you. And thank you very much for watching and for your time. It's really your contribution and your support that makes this show possible and lets us keep doing it. So if you would like to do that, might I invite you to perhaps share this with only one other person if you like, but really share how you feel about it, not just the good, just the bad as well, everything. And really share what you think about this with one other person, and have those conversations yourself. Go out there and start challenging assumptions and make some delightful dissent of your own. Thank you very much. See you again soon.